Hello and welcome, and very good morning to all the participants as well as the distinguished speakers who have joined us this morning for the 66th edition of SKOCH Summit. India responds COVID and governance. In fact, if you look around, there has been enough talk and enough discussions on COVID that's been happening. But rarely have we come across on the governance part. Look at it this way. We've been talking of a new normal, but looks like this new normal is going to be pretty much normal for us. We have had, periods of lockdown, 1, 2, 3, and, partial unlockdown. Our experience has shown that perhaps these lockdowns were not required, but there has been a learning. The learning is a hope that I see COVID and governance is the talk given by Mr. Samir Kocher. I will invite him. Let me introduce the rest of the speakers. India's response to pandemic, 9 lessons for effective public management, comes from Professor Prajapati Trivedi, Commonwealth Secretary General Special Envoy for SDG implementation. He was also Secretary Performance Management in the Cabinet Secretariat in the Prime Minister's office, a position that was never heard of in the history of independent India. Talk about businesses, equally important when we say that the life is now limping back to normal. We are no more crippled. Therefore, what's important is to maintain the business continuity. That remains the key. So we have a global field delivery director from HPE, Mr. Ramachandran V. He will be talking about a few cases and case studies that he's going to be presenting, which are going to be a key learning factor for a whole gamut of businesses across the country. But yes, COVID-19 has given us a chance to go digital. Not that the digital was not happening, but there is a time during our life and time today when there is no going away from digital. We adopted digital many, many years ago. That was also under a kind of a compulsion wherein we were told that in case we do not adopt digital, the businesses are going to stop. So there was a deadline given to the banking and financial services industry. There was a deadline given to the state departments. There was a deadline given even to the central government departments. But today, there is no deadline. It is happening on its own. So there is an opportunity even in the current crisis that we have. So we have put together a panel discussion around the digital governance post C19 and how is it that the states, our districts, our cities, as well as the public sector responding to it. At the bottom remains policy. So if we do not have a policy direction, a revival becomes a misguided missile. So on a policy for revival, we will be joined by Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, who is Principal Secretary IT and Industries from Telangana. And the sum total of that is transformation. When we say good governance, transformation remains on top. So for that, we will have Dr. Pathak, Professor Emeritus, joining us from IITB Mumbai. With this, let me quickly introduce Mr. Kocher. He is the chairman and, as we fondly call him, the leading light at SKOCH. Started in 1997 with a very, very humble background, living in a place called Paharganj in the alleys of Old Delhi. And coming from where he was, he literally practiced poverty for the first 17 years of his life. And while everybody was packing their bags to the colleges, he was packing his bags to earn money for the family. He saw to it that family comes out of the penury. He saw to it that his elder sister gets married while he sacrificed his youth. Finally, the grit and the passion paid. He rose to the position of the national marketing head of the garage startup called Pertec Computers, PCL, and left it when it reached a 600 crore company. And right from the bottom, he started once all over again and founded SKOCH. That was in the year 1997. And we have gone from notch to notch, climbed up many paces, and there we are today, where we are interacting with. Already there are 321 delegates who have joined us online, and a host of luminaries who are sitting with us on the panel. So without much ado, I invite Mr. Kocher for his opening comments.
I think you're going to be running a film and doing some live voting in between, aren't you?
We are going to be doing live voting immediately after you finish.
Okay. So, namaskar. I just want to make this very conversational and anecdotal. Age has got some advantages. One of the advantages being is that, you've been through a lot more crises than the people that you're talking to. I recall the first crisis of my life was the Indo-Pak war. And, I was under the impression that Pakistani had very specific instructions to bomb me and kill me particularly. And it used to be winter. And in a Rajai, I used to, hide in my mother's bosom, telling her to keep Pakistanis away. And as in that crisis and many, many more crises that were to follow, whether it was the emergency, whether it was economic situation, lot of ups and downs that our country went through. In every crisis, I found that all of us came together as a nation family. And I think we have to be thankful to God for one thing, that in these times of COVID, after maybe 20 years, we've become a nation family again. Everyone is concerned about anybody else's well-being. We are working like one unit with a lot of concern of what our fellow human beings are going through, what the migrants are going through, what our own staff is going through, what our peers are going through, our friends who lost their job, our friends who cannot pay their EMI. But still, the good fight has to carry on. So many helping hands reaching out for each other and giving each other a shoulder to cry for, with a very distinct disadvantage. In all the earlier crises, so to say, that we were there, physical proximity was not a problem. You could actually hug people and give them a real shoulder to cry on. What COVID has left us with is only the digital part of it. And when it is digital and, we are having these conversations, so what we've been trying to do at SKOCH is trying to make these conversations very humane, to possibly impart an emotion to a digital system or a computer, if something like that may be possible. So we say that just because we are talking to each other remotely should not change us as people. We should rediscover ourselves in our digital avatars. God gave us an entire package to be able to look in each other's eyes, to be able to empathize, and to be able to relate to each other. So can we have those conversations? Can we have those relationships online? Because beyond a point, it will be a very boring world that we live in. Social structures will break. The number of birthdays, weddings, funerals, kriyas, chothas I have attended in past 4 months on Zoom is not funny. And believe me, you do get involved. You get very involved, and the emotional kind of pours out because it comes from the heart. Similarly, when you're doing these personal things, can that emotion come back when you're doing professional things? Can you really be bothered about a small municipality, let's say Lanji or someplace like that, what they're going through, what is it that is happening in the Northeast, what is happening in a small district, what is happening to the migrant labor, and reach out to them with your message virtually and tell them, yes, we still care for you. If you look at the past 4 months have been defined by what I call fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is the hallmark of any emergency that there is. We are all very fearful. We are fearful not just for our own lives. We are fearful for lives of people around us, our near and dear ones. We are uncertain about what the future holds. And we have doubts about what is going to happen to all of us. What is our shared destiny? The good news is that whatever that shared destiny is will happen to all of us. So it is in our hands to craft it. all together as one nation family. When we started, I remember in March, Gusharan talked about so many ups and downs in my life. We had the annual summit that we do at the end of the financial year in March. Just 24 hours ahead, we had to cancel it. And to me, it was again the whole world came crashing, and we felt that, oh, we have to build this again. And there were economic pundits who were saying that no, India will fare better. We will look at 1%, 2% growth within 15 days. And I said, listen, I've seen this story before. You have to be, either Nostradamus or, more brilliant than Einstein to be able to say where this economy is headed, because there isn't enough data and there isn't enough evidence. I looked back at history and I said that something like World War One, resulted in minus 8.33%. That's the same as 1 month's GDP. That was the kind of contraction. So if we think that we have not lost even 1 month's GDP, we are living in cuckoo land. Probably we've lost a lot more. Even today, I find that, so from that graduated response to plus 1% to minus 2% to minus 7%, recently I was looking at somebody who said minus 10.1%. And we've not yet hit the bottom. This is not a race that we want to win. How low it goes. But the thing is that the economy is down. The job situation is precarious. In MSME sector that we track very closely, 3 crore jobs have already gone. By end of August, we expect 4 crore jobs to have been extinguished completely. Just let that sink in. When you say 4 crore jobs in a family of 5, that's 20 crore people. That's 20 crore mouths to feed in a nation of 100 crore people. What are those families going through? What is their hope? What will they come out with? What is going to happen? What is going to happen to all of them is a decision that all of us and our actions will need to take as a nation family. Will we work for just our revival, or we are going to work for revival of India? The Prime Minister has given a clarion call for Atmanirbhar Bharat. I say good speed to him. And in this bleak scenario, what we have been trying to do is keeping hope alive. What is in short supply just now? In any situation of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, hope is always in short supply. So if you look at today's SKOCH summit, is about offering a beacon of hope. Can we all share? So what I'll tell everybody, I was talking, we must smile a lot, we must laugh a lot, laugh a lot when we talk to each other. We haven't talked to people who laugh. When you're digitally there, hardly anyone smiles. Everyone becomes so serious. So don't be serious. Smile, look directly into the camera as if you're peering in the eyes of everyone who's watching you, and laugh and share the joy that we have survived this far, we will survive further. So what is it that is giving me this hope today? One thing that has given me the maximum hope is emergence of field warriors. Earlier, it was a central government, it was some secretary to government of India or the minister or the prime minister who was expected to take the lead. But there are so many beacons of hope that we found at the block level, at the district level, at the village level, where people have taken the lead and have led an entire community, whether it's economic revival, whether it's survival or it's transformation. There are so many stories that you have. In such vast numbers, India has never transformed. And in such vast numbers, India has never had leaders. In such vast numbers, there has been no capacity demonstration that, yes, we are a very competent country. So that's the single thing that has given me a lot of hope, that as an entire country, as a nation, we have risen to this challenge and everyone is doing their bit. The second thing which is giving me a lot of hope is that all financial schemes of the government, or all the financial might of the country, is being redirected towards human needs. When your family is in trouble, the guy who's most in the trouble, he needs to be supported. The guy who's most hungry needs to be fed. The guy who's most thirsty needs to be given water. So I see this repurposing of public finance in India happening. People say, are we going socialist? No, we are not going socialist. It is this revival where we are, giving free food, we are giving Narega wages, etc., which is going to lead to economic revival of the country, because these are the people who feel hunger the most, they feel thirst the most, they have needs the most. One policy direction where we may have erred, and I have talked about it often, is that why is it in India that you have to reach rural India to get social security? Why there is no social security in urban India? And we've argued it for a very long time. And I'm happy to note that 2 days back there was a news that there is a Narega equivalent of urban India that is being thought of, which has been my long-standing recommendation. Now, all these laborers who were working with us, all our drivers, all our peons who went home, had no need to go home. If there was Narega kind of wage available through MSMEs or through industry, through that support, they would have stayed where they were. And the economic revival would have encompassed urban India as well. Anyway, so there are lessons that we learn. The system is being redefined. Bottom up is finally becoming a reality. Decentralized planning is what we had talked about. I remember when Montek Singh Ahluwalia was in the Planning Commission. Now, I think India has taken an entire leap, not just decentralized planning. We have moved to decentralized implementation straight away. Every city, every village, every district, every block, every government functionary has an implementation plan and a dashboard and is monitoring very minutely the outcomes. You see Gurgaon buses, since there are no passengers, being repurposed as grocery shops, as repurposed as mobile hospitals, as pharmacies. And there are similar stories everywhere. No one told them to do this. It came out as a very keen desire to use assets of the country for the benefits of the people wherever those assets are. And we find these assets at the grassroots. And some inspiring stories we'll hear, like containers being converted into hospitals or bogies and trains converting into hospitals. So from bottom-up planning, which never really happened, we have gone into decentralized implementation straight away. That gives me a lot of hope. When you say the new normal, this is the new normal, I'll tell you what is the new normal. Decentralization is the new normal. Decentralization of funds is the new normal. Decentralization of functionaries and finances is the new normal. And that is what is going to make this country great. On the global front, there were a lot of historical mistakes we have made. We learn from these mistakes. I've always argued that these multilateral trade agreements don't work, FTAs don't work, because if India has to be a labor-intensive, job-generative economy, then we cannot let our manufacturing capacity corrode. The single biggest disservice that was done by signing WTO is that India cut off its manufacturing arms. There is no manufacturing left in this country. Even the big guys have chosen offshore to start manufacturing. The new global order is now going to ensure that the manufacturing is going to come back. There is economic nationalism, which is at the rise. It is also called Atmanirbhar Bharat. We will make sure that everything that is consumed in India should, to whatever extent possible, be manufactured in India, to be made in India. We have not seen any shortages. We have not seen long queues. We haven't seen anything in short supply. And imports have been repurposed. Manufacturing has been repurposed. So the entire country, the nation family, has risen and responded to it. So, earlier there used to be paper tigers. Now there are digital tigers. So there are two extremes that India is moving in. Everything is becoming a part of a digital supply chain. But I can tell you, economy doesn't come out of a spreadsheet. You cannot model and you cannot say that. So there is nothing that is going to replace the primary and the secondary industries. People will have to manufacture. People will have to toil in the field. People will have to work in factories. If digital has to succeed and you say IT industry is going to do very well because, everyone is working from home, but they have to foot the bill for working from home. So unless the real industry works, the real farmer works, the real factory works, there is no one to pay for IT. And I think so let us not be delusional and keep that reality in mind, that even if you're IT, if you're a digital warrior, if you're talking about artificial intelligence, how does it relate and change a common man's lot? That is extremely important. Moving forward to the future, I see a lot of hope. There was an unfinished reforms agenda. The biggest reform agenda that remains unfinished is administrative reforms. while we did financial reforms, we did a lot of reforms, nothing practically was done for administrative reforms. And there we have an expert speaker today. I remember he was like from space age when he was in the cabinet secretariat, because his job was outcome management. How do you do outcome budgeting in a country like India, where you are punished for not doing your spending? Your budget lapse. Oh my God, you're so bad because you saved some money for the government. So that paradigm has to shift. And I really hope that that administrative reform agenda would move forward. Labor reforms would move forward. Ease of business will actually become real, and the good thing is that for any sane policy, there is no opposition left. Speaking truth to the power is now an existential necessity. You cannot be a courtier anymore. You cannot create an echo chamber around your leaders, because then you are to be blamed yourself. You must speak the truth. You must be a voice multiplier. You must talk about who've done good. And those are the stories of hope that you will see throughout panning out today. How little people, how district commissioners, how district medical officers, how block level functionaries, how sub block level functionaries, how village level functionaries have risen to these tasks. And these are the unsung heroes. Mainline media has no time for them. No one has any time for them. We look for these beacons of hope. We do a fine tooth combing of the entire country. We locate you. We locate you and we honor you. We locate you and we honor you because your story is nationally important contemporary history. It is a story that will inspire thousands of others. And that is a story that is going to transform India. I hope to write many, many books. In these books, there should be chapters about people like you, ordinary people. God's blessings be added to you. We are all together. We are one nation family. Please speak freely. Please interact. Don't become something that you're not. दिल से बोलिए, जोर की बोलिए, अपनी आवाज सुनाइए, सबका भला होगा. God bless you. Bharat Mata ki jai.
Well, Mr. Kochar, that was great. I'm sure, I am moved by your speech. I'm moved by your thoughts. And something that comes out exemplary in this is that documenting the contemporary history of India. What happens is that these kind of achievements which come from the grassroots, they kind of get lost in the media jamboree, because media is not focused on that. The mainline media has only one and the single agenda of to talk about what's not working. There is hardly any talk about what's working. Believe you me, in the run-up to the conference today, we have actually interacted with more than 300 stakeholders who have contributed to make India safe and come out shining out of this COVID experience. What kind of work they have done at the grassroots, only they know. What kind of toll it has taken on their health, only they know. What kind of efforts have gone into it, no one knows and no one cares to know. This is precisely what we did during last 3 months, that instead of getting swayed by what the mainline media is talking about, let's go down to the grassroots where India lives and find out the drudgery as well as of the people, as well as the administration which contributed by repurposing its resources. And I would say this was a phenomenal response by everyone put together to the felt need. That is, we have to save India, we have to save Indians. So we have the live poll coming up, of those projects which participated in the live exhibition for almost 7 days. So this is a part of the contest to the SKOCH Awards, for which the process has taken almost more than 3 months. So it's been a painstaking process to identify those beacons of hope, as Mr. Kochar talked about, and bring them together on this platform, not only for them to be recognized for the work that they have done, but also at the same time, learning and sharing, the cross-pollination of ideas that take place as to what I did probably in Mizoram is something which has a learning for somebody sitting there remotely in Kanyakumari. So Deepak, with this, the moment this poll ends, can we run a small video clip? This is going to be for 3 minutes. It's another 2 minutes and then it goes off.
In the meanwhile, I must, if I may, there is a question from Mr. Vishal Sharma who's joining us. He says, sir, our solutions are in nature. We should be a part to turn the table to COVID-19 and sustainability of the ecosystem. Yes, my friend, the answer is in sustainable living. You know, all of us have become very frugal. We tell our children to switch off fans and switch off geysers and switch off ACs and consume less and become less materialistic. And we are moving towards organic, less consumption economy. So sustainability will happen. I completely agree with you that without sustainability, there is no hope of survival against COVID-19. COVID-19 is God's way of telling us to move towards sustainability. And I think if we ignore that symbol, we would have erred greatly.
स्कॉच फाउंडेशन को और उसके सभी पदाधिकारियों को हृदय से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूं कि इस पुरस्कार के लिए उनने मेरा चयन किया है.
Mr. Samir Kocher's book on Modinomics is being released today. We've just had the benefit of listening to him. I must say he's a very blunt man.
He is really a very resourceful person.
समीर जी, I want to thank you very much. हम लोगों ने सबने अपनी जनता की प्रतिज्ञा ली है समीर जी. ये प्रतिज्ञा लेके सेवा की सोच करके हम यहाँ इस मंच पे आए हैं.
मैं फिर से धन्यवाद देती हूँ कोचर जी को, क्योंकि उन्होंने अपनी मेहनत, अपनी लगन से, मैंने अपनी मर्जी से यहाँ आए हैं अपनी टीम के साथ. उन्होंने अपनी जिंदगी का 3 पूरे दिन हमको दिया है.
Thank you very much, Samir ji, for this opportunity. You said I've attended, this is my 3rd event at SKOCH.
नीचे से उठ करके ऊपर आने वाले समीर कोचर जी मेरे बहुत अच्छे मित्र हैं.
I congratulate Shri Samir Kocher.
Thank you to Samir Kocher for putting together.
So we have the poll now coming up to rate Mr. Kocher's talk. Kindly do share your experiences. Do let us know how is it that we can improve more. You are an equal stakeholder, not only in the success of India, as well as on the platform on which you are sitting today. So after this, we will be coming up with the second poll on the contestants. And in the meanwhile, I will introduce our next speaker, Professor Prajapati Trivedi, speaking on India's response to coronavirus pandemic, 9 lessons for effective public management. A lot of you may already know him, that he is currently a Commonwealth Secretary General Special Envoy for SDG implementation. Till recently, he was the Senior Director, heading the Economic, Youth and Sustainable Directorate of the Commonwealth Secretariat in London. In this position, also, he reopened directly to the Secretary General for the Commonwealth Secretariat. And he's also a visiting professor across several reputed universities worldwide. He is talking on, as I said, these 9 lessons for effective public management, examining the response of a democratic government, drawing lessons for effective public management in dealing with other grand public management challenges of our times. And this is something which is going to be throwing light on the way moving forward. With this, I now invite Professor Prajapati.
Thank you, Dr. Dhanjal. Thank you very much. I'm delighted and I'm absolutely honored to be here. I will be sharing some of my thoughts based on a paper which was recently published in the American Review of Public Administration with the same title pretty much. And I will share the findings. This was in April. Things have changed, but the basic scenario remains the same. Let me first also say that how delighted and how inspired I am listening to Mr. Kochhar, who I have known him for many, many years now. I remember meeting him way back, almost 10 years back in my office and other places. And so it's a great pleasure. And his optimism is really inspiring. And I align myself with that optimism. I agree with most of what he has said. And I, in fact, will take this ball little further. If one had to ask anybody, what is the problem in India? The problem would be implementation. We don't have a problem of ideas. In fact, I have been on record writing to the Cabinet Secretary saying we should have a moratorium on new ideas for 2 years because we have not implemented previous ideas, as Mr. Kochhar just said, that we have set up administrative reform commissions. We just had, huge amount of money of a poor democracy was spent on administrative reform commission, and people agreed. It was gazetted. There were a group of ministers who agreed on the implementation, yet they have not been implemented. So it's not about setting up another commission on administrative reform. We've had enough commissions. There are a huge number of reports. It is implementation, implementation, implementation. The competitive and comparative advantage of our country will be determined only by our ability to implement ideas, not by generating ideas. We have great people. They won Nobel Prize. We have people everywhere, the same people working in the World Bank to you name it, they are there. So it's not about ideas anymore. We have the ideas. It's implementation. And that's why I'm delighted to report to you what I found. And this has been a topic close to my heart. So it's not that I sort of just suddenly woke up for COVID, but when I looked at it, I found there were 9 similarities. In fact, they could be called the 9 habits of an effective government. And this across, in my long years, I worked in 50 countries, not traveled, but worked, advising, working. And I find great amount of similarity where things work and where things don't work. And I would like to share those 9 similarities where things work. And these are also the instruments for transforming any government. And that's why, if you pardon me, I'm going to use a PowerPoint just simply because it'll be easier for you to follow and perhaps for me to speak. So allow me to share my screen with your permission. And I have the screen. I hope everyone can see. Mr. Kochhar, you can see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. So these are the 9 habits of an effective government. I call them 9 lessons for effective public management. Let me start by saying that in April, there was no doubt that all agencies had come to the conclusion, including the World Health Organization, that India had done a great job. Among the large countries, and even today, if you look at the per capita death rate, we are doing very well. Infection has gone up, but in this business, the real thing is making sure not too many people die. I mean, infection is a means towards an end. The end is to prevent fatalities from coronavirus. And we per capita in a large democratic country, which is a developing country, we are doing by any standards compared to US, Europe, etc. We are doing well. So there is no doubt. It's not my personal opinion. It's the World Health Organization's opinion. And I'll be happy to share that. Now, why did that happen? Why did the experts say, not me, the experts? And that's why I got thinking. I said, well, how come this has been such a great success? Or at least everybody from New York Times to WHO was saying, well, India has done very well. Our initial response, lockdown, decisiveness, firmness, the way we moved. And perhaps we are reaping benefits now. Of course, given the virus, you can't have perfection. It will spread, but the counterfactual could have been much worse. And that's what we have to look at, the glass half full, not the one which maybe empty still. So the first thing, why things worked in this, and this is really for all government agencies. I'm not just making a point about COVID in a narrow sense of the word. I would like this, if we learn these lessons, to be translated to other areas of public sector management. The first is clarity of goals and objective. In this case, the goal was very clear. We had to prevent the spread of infection and reduce fatalities. There was no ambiguity about it. So the clarity of goal is the starting point in public management. What happens, the bane of public management or the government management is most of the time you don't know what you're supposed to do. There are multiple principals who have multiple objectives which are often conflicting. You know, Ministry of Finance is asking something, the Niti Aayog is asking something, someone is asking. So therefore, clarity of goals and objectives really in this case was a very big factor why we were able to focus our attention and get things done. So I think that is a lesson we need to learn, that if we have to get any job done, whether in public or private sector, but especially in public sector, because we have multiple principles. Everybody thinks they have a right to supervise the government, whether it's the CAG or it's the Standing Committee of the Parliament or it's the media. It's even more important to have clarity of goals, so everybody comes on the same platform. So I think that was a very big factor. We must learn a lesson that we must have clarity of goals if we have to achieve. It shouldn't be that you talk to 5 people and they tell you 5 different versions of what you're supposed to do. So clarity of goals is a starting point. And in this case, we had very clear goals, what we need to do as a country, and therefore we have succeeded as a country, or we are succeeding as a country. Then the other thing is you may have clarity of goals, but you may not know how to measure them. You may say, you know, unemployment, but they may not be, either you may not be able to measure or you don't know what's going on. But what gets measured gets done. You must be able to measure. In this case, that also fortunately was very easy. You can see in your Arogya Setu app to WHO website and many other websites that everybody knows that what the death rate is, what the infection rate is. So everything is being measured on a almost 4 times a day basis. And you have, so everyone knows what to measure and how to measure, and it's being measured. So not only the goals were clear, but also they were being measured. And I think that contributed to clarity and also motivation in getting things done. So that's the second lesson. If you have to get something done, what gets measured gets done. If you can't measure, you may have lofty goals, but if you can't measure, you will never know whether you're moving towards them or away from them. So it's very important that we do this. Again, you may have goals and you may be measuring, but people don't know how you come up. You know, a lot of governments come up and say, we have done such an excellent job. And the opposition says, no, 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 you have not done, you know, this job is lousy. And the people get confused. So transparency of data, that how was it measured and what are your operations is terribly important. In this case, there was total transparency because World Health Organization and other agencies, it was an international issue. The data was completely transparent. It was being maintained transparently. It was being shared transparently. And therefore, it really mattered and it made a difference. Nobody really questions the data. I have not seen anybody questioning the data. There are, of course, as Dr. Dhanjal said, there will always be fringe people who will question anything yet you do, but we leave those 10% out. But I'm talking in general, people trust that data. They may not like it. They may say that this is not good, but they trust. There's no major distrust of the data because deaths can't be hidden in a democratic country. They could be in some other countries which are not democratic, but in democracy, the last thing that you can do is hide a death because everybody gets to know. So I think it's very important. We had transparent data which contributed to this, and it will contribute. Then accountability. In this case, there was no fudging. People were accountable. There were people who were assigned and you knew who was in charge. You knew the names of the people who were in charge. Even if it was chief minister or the head of any task force, everybody knew who was accountable, who was supposed to be doing, and therefore that mattered. In many situations, you don't know. You know, you may have goals, you may know what to do, but you don't know really. They say, well, you know, the malaria eradication did not work, but malaria eradication is not a person, it's a program. Who was in charge of that? If it didn't work, did anybody catch the person's neck? And in this case, that was the case. And therefore, I believe for effective management, you must assign explicit and unambiguous accountability for delivery. Again, one of the things that we have learned is the accountability for results trickles down, right from the Prime Minister who made himself accountable. He took the blame for everything. He said, I am leading the charge. And therefore, the accountability trickled down from him to the chief ministers, to chief secretary, down the line. But it cannot trickle up. If you just delegate the accountability to someone at the district level, it will not trickle up to the level of the minister or chief minister or even the prime minister. So accountability always trickles down. So if you have to get great things done, the top must be feeling accountable. They must convey that they are accountable. They're listening and they are acting. And I think in this case, we had that, and therefore the stars were aligned in a good way for us as a country. The sixth was there must be incentives to perform. Very important. You may have all the other things, but human beings are driven by incentives. If there are no consequences for good or bad delivery or performance or action, then people say, well, it doesn't matter. They just stop, but it really doesn't. But in this case, I can name people who lost jobs. There were people who were transferred. People were, there were incentives and disincentives more than incentives to perform. People knew there will be consequences if you did not deliver. And there were consequences of people who slipped. So I think that was an important lesson, that you can't have lofty ideals and assume that everyone is so well-intentioned that things will happen, whether, there are exceptions. Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi are exceptions. We can't expect everyone to be like that. You have to have consequences for delivery, or non-delivery of what is expected from a national perspective. So I would classify that as a lesson number 6, which is very important when we are designing public systems. We must not ignore and just say, and I say this having sat in committee of secretaries where some people would argue, because from 1987, the 4th Pay Commission, the 5th Pay Commission, the 6th Pay Commission, and the 7th Pay Commission. Trust me, it was my business to read. I was paid to read these reports, and I was in fact hired to implement them. All have said that we must have a performance-related incentive scheme in government. They said, we have increased your salary so much, now it must be matched by performance-related incentive. It has not been implemented. So when I say this, it's not just an empty talk. This is the need of the hour. There must be incentive, consequences. Otherwise, we will not, as a nation, make progress. We can't depend on people's goodwill. This is not, nation building is not a matter of just goodwill and karat, that you're doing someone a favor. It's a duty. Importance of communication. I have been part of governments where, we can't be terribly proud of communication, because communication is very important. You can have an excellent policy, but if you're not able to communicate in a manner that it resonates with people and you take them along, and if you can communicate, trust me, half your job is done. You don't even have to do it, because people will do it. As Mr. Kocher and Dr. Dhanjal have just pointed out, that they have discovered that the action is happening, and it's happening because they were communicated from the heart. People knew what is expected, and they rise up to the occasion. But they need to be told, taken into confidence, and communicated the importance. So the importance of communication in public policy implementation is beyond doubt, and we don't pay much attention. We think, well, it's a good policy and it will be done, as if you can assume. People will figure it out that it's such a great policy. No, all policies have to be marketed like any other good idea. And when you market those ideas and you make the people buy into it, then half your job is done, because people will then, because it's in their interest to implement it also. It's not that it's just in the interest of one group of people in the government. The entire nation wants to implement. These are public policies. These are not private policies. And therefore one must, I could go on this, and each one of them is a matter of at least a paper or a book. And on each one of them, I have worked for a long time. And so therefore, when I come to these conclusions, it's not just looking at one crisis, it's across that these are important lessons for effective public management. 8, whole of government approach. Many times we take these narrow silo-oriented approach. We say this, everyone knows, and I hate to say it because it looks so obvious and so repetitive that we work in silos. Whereas, in government, everything we do is a team sport. And there are excellent examples of teamwork, and I can quote, but this is not the place, nor do I have the time to do it. But many of these, in fact, I would say most of the problems that we have in our country, the ones which matter, require a whole of government approach. In fact, it requires a whole of society approach, beyond the government also. But at the very minimum, whole of government approach, because if the whole of government is not involved, the whole of society has no chance of being involved. So you start with whole of government must be on the same page, and there are ways of doing it. Happy to answer any questions on any one of them, that how can this be done. Each one of them is doable and has been done. It's not a theoretical proposition that I make here. Finally, there is no doubt that you can't implement these things if you do not take a systems approach. A lot of time people say in government that people come and talk, when I was in the government, I did this, I did that. And people ask, so what happened, sir, when you left? Well, it just went down the tube. And so what happened? Because we don't take a systems approach. It's a very personalized approach, and we must be very careful. And in this case, we not only had the whole of government approach, but we have a systematic approach. We had standard operating procedures. We knew which agency is looking after what. So we took a systems approach, and that's why it's sustainable. That's why it is still working. And that's why one person doesn't have to stay up the whole night worrying, because it's the system. Because from Peter Drucker onwards, all management gurus have told us, we keep forgetting, it's nothing new, that 80% of the outcomes of any policy initiative are dependent on system, only 20 on people. I hate to say this when 400 or 500 people are watching this, but frankly, it's the system that really delivers. People play only 20% of the role, and within that 20%, 80% is leadership. And in fact, it is the job of the leaders to create systems and nurture them. And therefore, I cannot overemphasize how important it is in all our lives, but particularly in public sector, to take a systems approach so that a person may come and go, but the system continues to deliver. And that is really what we should aspire. And that's what we have seen, that when in the case of COVID, we took a systems approach, we delivered. So all these 9 conditions were fulfilled, and that's why the rest of the world thinks India has done a great job, considering that we are such a large democracy. I mean, let me emphasize, a large democracy. It could be a different ballgame in any other system of governance. We are talking about democracy, and that's a different kettle of fish than some of the other systems that exist. So in a democracy, to be able to do this in a way that people will be voting, not just on Zoom and doing the polling, but there'll be a real vote which will count. And so you have to do things in a systematic and a proper way. So with that, I will stop, because I know there are a lot of things to be done. So thank you very much for your patience and for listening to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for extremely informative and also at the same time insightful. Because, so far, these were the characteristics with which, we've been identifying India with. No clarity, no measurable outcomes, non-transparent system, zero accountability, incentive system totally lacking, poor communication. On top of that, no systemic as well as a siloed approach. But, this has been unprecedented. Corona, did not look at caste, color, creed, sex, whatever.
Absolutely.
It became a question of survival.
Absolutely.
So that is something which everybody got together. No unrest. Otherwise, in a situation like this, bad news comes first. So it was enhanced compliance, not only from the perspective of the administration, but as well as people. Delivering to people's expectations. It's something which was really, really exemplified. And I think that has come out very, very clearly in
Thank
your
you.
talk.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Put together, this equals to good governance. So you have talked about the key. So
Thank you.
we have an example for a replication to go, next maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 generations, fully transforming ourselves.
Absolutely.
I have a few questions here coming in. Both you as well as Mr. Kocher. First, I will ask you, there is a question from Sudhanshu. He's asking how the implementation problem will be overcome over a period of time, because very soon we are going back to the normal. So is this going to wane?
No, in my view, in democracy, this takes 2-3 efforts. First time, and I don't want to take the time, but I'll be happy to, you can set up, Dr. Dhanjal can set up some forum where we can discuss this in greater detail. But to the question, I want to say that it has been done in our country. It's like the old relics we find that we are rediscovering. It has been done. But in democracy, sometimes when the ideas are too far ahead, they go back and they come back and then eventually come. So, in other forms of government, you can just go in straight line. Here, you have to go zigzag, maybe back. So be optimistic and happy to share. In fact, I personally was involved in, I think both Dr. Dhanjal and Mr. Kocher mentioned that I was in charge for 5 years, looking and reporting to the Prime Minister on the performance of the government. And we developed a system which is being used worldwide. I mean, the reason I am a special envoy for SDG implementation is not because of anything, because of the work and the experience. People value it. In 54 countries, it is a big hit. In the Commonwealth countries, there are 54 countries which are part of the Commonwealth. It is being done. So we should be hopeful. It is just a matter of taking a decision in the government. And I think these are signs that we're moving in the right direction. And we should just feel that we will learn lesson and it will happen, because this is not rocket science. This can be done, as I have told many countries from Barbados to Dominica, which are very small compared to India. They'll be like Saket or Greater Kailash. That's what the size of these countries is. These countries are moving forward in a way that you'd find it hard to believe. So therefore, it is doable. There's no big money involved. It is costless. It's just a question of willpower and taking the decision to do it. It's all written up. These are not ideas that I'm giving you. If you read the report of the Administrative Reform Commission, this is the recommendation of the Second Administrative Reform Commission. Ditto. I'm not adding one thing to it. By a group of ministers. And a group of ministers is not for a government. They represent India. Once they take a decision, and every government is obliged to carry on. So I would say that continue to be optimistic, and let's fight this battle together, and we shall overcome in our lifetimes.
Absolutely. So there's another one coming up from Biju Cherian. Something similar, but yes, in your experience, been the 3 main challenges in bringing a systems approach, especially in India, and how can we overcome these challenges consistently?
Hear you.
You want me to repeat? I think
yes, please.
Yeah. So he's asking, what are the 3 main challenges in bringing in a systems approach, especially in India, and how can we overcome these challenges consistently?
Maybe it's my computer, but I'm not able to hear. That just freezes. Your voice freezes. I can see you.
Let me repeat it. So
yeah, but slowly. Yeah.
So the question is, the 3 main challenges in your experience, bringing in a systems approach in context of India, and how can we overcome these consistently?
Well, systems are not made by people at lower end. This is
Gursharan, I think we should move on because there's an audio.
And the day working with the various other prime ministers I've seen, they take a decision and it works. Everybody, these are reasonable things. Every citizen finds it so reasonable that you're only asking, what is the reason for your salary? Why do we pay you so much? This is our tax money. Why do we pay you this much? Can you just tell us, write it down on a simple piece of paper and we'll hold you to it. There's no Nobel Prize to be won for this idea, but this decision, believe me, it sounds commonsensical, but has to be taken at the top. Anything lower than that, if I were to suggest or you were to suggest, people will say, who are you? But when the top asks this question, no one says that. And you can see, as Dr. Dhanjal pointed out, when I was appointed Secretary to Government of India for Performance Management, no one said anything for 5 years. Everybody felt it was the right thing to do. I mean, we are only asking, what do you get your salary for? And they told us what they get it for. And we say, what are you going to go do this year? They say, we are going to do this year. And we say, great, we'll see you at the end of the year, whether you've done it or not. But there was someone following up, someone going with the same list, which says, you promised this, let's see what you have delivered. And we said, okay, you've delivered 80% of it. And we told the Prime Minister, sir, Mr. So-and-so has delivered 80% of what he promised. That's all. Where is there, you don't need a PhD from MIT to figure this out. So therefore, it's a doable proposition. It's a leadership issue, in my view, straightforward. There is no obstacle to it at all. It costs no money. It costs it does not require any special abilities, common sense, will to do it. And it's a leadership issue.
Wonderful. Let me quickly take one question from Rohan at this point.
Professor Trivedi, I'm a researcher in the public administration and public management discipline, and I'm absolutely floored by your talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I think that was a spectacular presentation. I have one quick question to you, sir. Within the public management discipline, there is often a narrative that policies are very well designed, but it's the ground level and the street level bureaucracy, due to misaligned incentives and the problems of control and coordination, that often fail to perform. Do you think India's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was an exception to this narrative?
Trust me, I say this, and in fact, it's an article which I want to write. One of the things that distinguishes us from other countries when you look around is our, it's a cliche in India, it's called the steel frame, the administrative service. But it is a highly unique service we have, because people in the Indian administrative service actually belong to the states. Their salaries are paid by the states. They are central government employees, but their salaries are paid there. But what unifies this steel frame is the cabinet secretary. So you should see, and I'm sure you have seen, I saw those circulars. No other country in the world, in United States or even in UK, they don't have this system, which is the mother of our Westminster form of government. When the Cabinet Secretary of India writes, every chief secretary feels that they have to do it. They're more worried about Cabinet Secretary than the Chief Minister, because, administrative hierarchy is ultimately the Cabinet Secretary who is the head of the civil service. So we have this fantastic system that, their salary is paid by the Chief Minister. In fact, their appraisal is written by the Chief Minister, but their ultimate loyalty is to the union and to the government, and especially on administrative and not political matters or anything, is to the Cabinet Secretary. And I think that really made a difference. Very few countries had this steel frame, which was rejuvenated in a good way, that they had this video conference with all the chief secretaries there and saying, and every chief secretary followed that dictum well. So I think it did. We do have a unique system, which I find looking at 54 countries, very few countries, if at all any country has this. I haven't come across any country which has this unique system. And I think it served us well and will serve us well if we use it properly.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your invigorating inputs to the forum. We definitely would love to take this discussion forward and take your suggestion there. Business goes on. And that's exactly what our next speaker, Mr. Ramachandran V, Director, Global Field Delivery from HPE Point Next Services, is going to be talking about. Business continuity is the key. He has more than 25 years of IT experience, most of it across India, combined with a stint at Singapore, leading APJ sales for cloud business. 20 years of successful stint at HPE, an old hand. held various leadership positions across IT, product management, sales, consulting, and currently as overall services delivery leader for India geography. In his current role, he is instrumental in transforming the delivery with laser sharp focus on enhanced customer experience. Business continuity is the key. Ram. Please unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead, please.
What a great morning to be here. And thank you for having us here. Absolutely, the platform was set by Dr. Gunjan, and voice of the man or voice for the man came from Samir, and voice for the system came from Professor Prajapati. What an excellent fortune that I have to share the platform with all of you, the contributors to the new transforming journey of India. Absolutely thrilled to hear from you on all of this context that can put the best of ideas to the common man and that can help them. What I would do in the next maybe 10 minutes is to just see some pointers that I took from Dr. Prajapati on how ideas can be turned into reality, right? What can we do together as private and public in terms of delivering those that can make a difference to a common man's life, right? Let me attempt that. First of all, wish each one of you on this call and otherwise a safe and secure time ahead. Let me thank Dr. Sabir, Dr. Gunjan, and the SKOCH team for giving Hewlett Packard Enterprise an opportunity to share on the areas of work that we have done, especially during the pandemic. And I'm appalled by the way that you've taken notice of the work that we have done. Thank you very much for that. So let me take that first slide here. What you see here is primarily the people who had made differences to us. On the from Prime Minister downwards to the ministers and the government officials on the policy making, and the people on the ground who actually made our living as normal as possible, the medicos, the police, the health workers, the pop and mom shops that fed us on this pandemic, in this whole system. And also thank the HPE folks who are supporting all these customers, the essential services customers and beyond, being on-site and remote. What I will do is I'll just give you the first few minutes about what HPE has done as business continuity plan within the organization. As a global organization, we got a whiff of it a little early. So for us, March 4th was the day when we had the first BCP mock conducted across many geographies in the world. And that happened in India too. That means 10 days ahead of WHO announcing this as a pandemic. So what did we do in this? If you look at, we have 4 large entities adding up to around 20,000 people, both direct and indirect. We had people working for India business. We had people working for engineering and research. We had people working for global operations, and we have people working for global functions, which are running or which are directly involved in publishing our results. Most of these functions happen out of a lot of these functions. Most of its activities happen out of India. If you look at, if something happens to our offices and we are not able to function, look at the impact that we will have it at the global level, the functions that India delivers for the global activities. So what have we done? We have created a complete BCP plan. We had a mock done on March 4th, where we had 99% of employees completely working from remote, which means that we had ensured that they had the required connectivity. They had power backup in certain of the locations where it was much needed. And with this functionals, we tested completely, and we had the first quarter end, that our quarter end Q1 ended in January. We had the financial results published for India and global seamlessly working remote. We had the CMT team, we call it the contingency management team. We work at multiple levels from the districts to the country to the global. That's how the hierarchy is. We work with every level to ensure that every employee's safety is clearly the utmost important for us. We devised a protocol in terms of what they need to do in case of emergency. We had these virtual teams comprising of business, finance, HR, IT, all of them together to ensure that they have a seamless experience, both with their personal safety as well as delivering on the services that we are expected to support the government and other essential services. So this whole activity happened, and even now we are completely remote. If we have to go to office, we need to have a separate application, a mobile app, where people have to request basis the essential activity that they need to do, and the approval is taken at the L2 level. Otherwise, people are not allowed to get into the office. While there is a policy that says that we can operate from 33, but we just wanted to check how much of it we could extend completely remote, so that if in case this continues for a longer period, we have the plan and we have the activities and the actions in place that helps us run through the year end, which means we are going to have this month end, the second quarter closing for India and global, going to be supported completely remote, and it is going through successfully and seamlessly in all these times, right? That's the kind of BCP that we have put in place. What is that we divided? We divided the activity into physical, which are people. Where are they going to be? Many of these people, we have different generation of people in this organization. We have the Gen Z who are working on shared places in today's world. So how do we get them together to work in enclosures that can help us to be safe, secure, and also maintain the confidentiality that are to be maintained for the organization? We put that as physical as first activity. Second is IT. What support we need to provide them, what kind of VPN access we need to provide, what kind of minimal bandwidth we need by the tool that they are going to operate. What are the automations that we're going to bring in so that the calls that are landing in the office automatically gets redirected to those respective individuals? And how are we going to make their efficiency improve or maintain? For them, if they are in office, they have 20 other avenues of getting those informations, and look at, you confined to your desk with limited such available resources. What do you do? So this is where we put together the whole plan, and we worked on each of those functions. Today, we have completed second quarter, and I'm sure even if this has to continue for a financial year-end closure, working remotely, I don't think there are any challenges. People have come absolutely working on the new norm. They understood what needs to be done, and it is working in our favor, right? So this is the business continuity part that we have maintained within HP. We are now 99.999% completely servicing our customers. Just to give you a frame of it, we handle around 120,000 cases as support calls, one function of what we do in the country for a year time. That's only for India. If this team is supporting global functions for most of the English-speaking countries, you can multiply the volume that they're handling. And we are currently maintaining our TCE at roughly around 96.7% globally. If you have to achieve this seamlessly, you could understand what needs to be done at the back end to provide this experience to our customers. That's a kind of enablement that we have done. And it is so far with all the support. And it is important to mention, the customers are understanding the reality, they're supporting, and wherever they could handle some of those flexibilities required, they're absolutely forthcoming and handling this. This is the first part of the discussion. And moving into the second part, HP has been supporting India in the transformation journey for smart cities. We have around 10 of smart cities. This is the typical blueprint that used to be there before the pandemic. What is that we need to do if you have to make a city smarter? It's primarily providing a consolidated environment where you have all the critical components that we need to bring in the smartness, whether it is public transport in terms of routes, in terms of the capacity management, revenue increase, or it is about traffic management, or creating a green lane, or it could be fire, any department, what I mentioned here. These were the critical discussions that used to happen before the pandemic. But what good thing happened because of smart cities, all of these varied departments within a state are now interconnected, which means their applications are all connected in one form or the other. There is a data exchange platform that is created, and in one location, we are able to do all of this. When pandemic was announced and India trying to cope up, in every state, they wanted to create one center, a nerve center, and they were looking at what should be the right place where we could create this platform where our chief ministers, our secretaries, our collectors, all the government officials can operate from one location and they can have a bird's eye view of what the city is going through. They didn't have a better place than that of the smart city and the nerve centers and the war rooms and the situation rooms that were created for handling these emergencies. So what happened when the pandemic announced? There was these discussions that happened between HPE, people like HPE who are supporting every state and the government officials, and how do we get this, the fastest way to get those information highway created by which we can collect data from different departments, make sense out of the data, send those data back to those important people who are on the ground with the correct information, ensure that the right actions are taken and the feedback is given back into the system so that we track till the closure of what happens with that particular event. Now, for example, what used to happen, first of all, the biggest challenge that we had was, how do we control spread, right? All of us were trying to do it at the city level. Then we realized that putting a lockdown on the city is going to paralyze the economy. We need to have some relaxation. We need to really be specific on which ward, where do we need to actually take action upon. And if you look at, we need to have a clear sequence of events that has to be chained together. How do I link these events together? Third important thing, if you look at, is what are the critical departments that are involved? What are those current lack of control or information that they have, which can help them to act even more proactively? And how do we connect the labs, the hospitals and health workers, police, everybody together? So we came up with an application to handle this within 7 days, right? We understood the situation. We added the capacity. In 7 days, we had the application by which we can carry out the first form of who the patient is and use the same data to be taken into the lab, taken into the hospital, taken into the quarantine, whether home or institutional, see how the health is progressing, and then get them discharged. And even when they go back to home, how do we ensure that they get the right inputs going through, right? This is the sequence of activities that we did. How did we achieve? We use the facilities that are there, audio conferencing, video conferencing. We change this as the telemedicine center. People call up on WhatsApp video. They get into what needs to be done. We tagged people by the geolocation and made them say that you are in hospital quarantine, you are supposed to be within this. If there are people trying to step out, then automatically the police gets alerted. So we created some solution by which we control the spread. We created a chain of activities. So today, if you look at that state, which went on a steady incremental in the early days, today, if you see them, it is absolutely under control, right? How is that we have done it? We clearly had solution for every part of the problem that we identified are critical. Whether you see here, which is primarily talking about how the operations happen, people from different departments, if you look at here, they're all coming together in sharing the data points that they have. And with that data that is clearly getting back into the operators here, they get that included into the management tool that you see here, which is a dashboard that runs on direct basis. And from there, we have some functionalities that we added by including the private cameras and all the surveillance cameras. This is how a meeting was happening of the resellers in a majority a market street. They all wanted to open, but the government officials had given them guidance on what are the steps and how we're going to open it. The social distancing is monitored, the count is taken here, and the feedbacks to these teams are given on instantaneous basis. How are we trying to prevent it? That is even more important. If you look at here, we realize that there are two problems that we have. One, people impacted, and second, the people who have got into this contact tracing with the people. So the contact tracing was very, very important for us. What we did here is we went by the wards of people who got impacted, and then we plotted the contacts of first and the second contact on where the residential addresses and which wards are, so that we know, one, people who are on the wards where the thresholds are, we can put the containments there. Second, even before anything can happen, we can go to the first and second contact to the respective wards and stop them moving out, being in quarantine, so that we can control the spread. We gave this heads up. We gave that complete forecasting to the government on daily basis, which says that these are the wards where they're exceeding the thresholds. These are the wards where the contact is getting multiplied, and we need to create a clear hotspot called out there, and we need to take the measures there. So we had a clear 6-stage process. What you see in the dashboard is this: the whole state, the whole city. And by this, you can see that the green and the amber and the red dots there, that tells you the locations and the wards within the geography, how it's been done. So it's a comprehensive solution that was created by which we are able to control the spread. And today, I think the effect of it is very well seen in the results that are there when in terms of the count of people that got reduced. I'm moving on to the last part of my presentation, which is basically the work that we have done together. How does a public and private come together, and how can we solve large set of problems? If you look at HP had the e-health centers across the country. We started in partnership with CASR, with IGIB. Dr. Anurag Agrawal was a key instrumental in terms of this venture. What we created is we created a concept that we need to address the healthcare problems that we see in remote locations. So we can't construct a building. So what we did is we created a 20-foot container. We reuse those containers in terms of creating a complete health center inside that. What did we do here? We created all the medical equipments, which are connected devices. We created the complete EMR on the cloud, and we had the patients which are kept in the remote portions of the villages where people don't have access to hospitals. They can come, they visit, and they're able to get a similar medical support that we typically get in the larger locations. How did we do? We had on-site staff, we had remote partnerships with hospitals, and then we had specialists who were on the video call who supported this. So we created 130 of this across the country, and we have almost 10 lakh patients who had visited these centers. Similar to the normal day, it was meant for any flu or any problem that the patient had. But when COVID happened, we worked with IGIB and we created a COVID test lab. We knew the problem that we were not getting adequate test kits, and we didn't have places where people can walk in. And even if the problem is there in the remote village, they have to walk through and expose themselves before they reach a hospital where the test can be done. So what have we done now? We have converted few of these health centers as COVID-19 testing centers, which we collaborated with the Ministry of Science and Technology. We collaborated with the state health departments. We use the same lab, but we added few more elements to it. We added few nursing stations, which are completely isolated. We created a negative air pressure doors so that there is no spread for people who are queuing outside and people inside. We do currently around 100 tests in one such e-health center. Complete devices are connected. And if there is anything that is required for doctor on a call, that's also available from the same center. So what have we achieved now? In the last 90 days, we were able to test around 51,000 people, and we've been able to publish the results. We have currently deployed this across 4 states, and now we have almost every state that is covered in the country with e-health centers. We are now gradually progressing to ensure that this is done across most of the e-health centers that are identified, so that people who have elementary symptoms can walk into the center as close as where they live and get a similar test and treatment that typically is done in larger cities. So this is a big transformation that we worked on. This is absolutely not possible with one private organization. We wanted the complete support and the concept to be worked together. This is a great classic example of how we worked with the CSIR lab, got this whole thing done, and we've been able to spread this across the country. And our endeavor is to see how much more we can do in this and how much more we could do in terms of handling such emergencies that can come across the country. Right? At the end, I think it's important that we play a role in terms of converting the idea into a reality that can make a difference to a common man. Here are a few of the comments that we heard from people who had used our e-health centers and who felt good about what we are able to achieve for them. So this is what I had to share with all of you on the 3 topics. Hope I was able to convey what was expected. Thank you, and wishing you all once again to be safe and be secure.
Well,
over to you, Dr. Gunjan.
Thank you very much. I mean, this was quite informative. Indeed, under all circumstances, with or without COVID, the show must go on. And as you rightly said, that in order to maintain the business continuity, there are several factors that come into play. The most important being to create, under such circumstances, a common chain of command and control. This is perhaps, something which I'm sure in your experience has come out shining through. I know most of these projects, which is what you have done for the smart cities, this is all under a PPP and the smart city program, and the solutions that you have implemented. What in your experience has been the disparate challenges where you moved from geography to geography and city to city? Because your experience pre-pandemic would have been different than during pandemic.
True. I think it's absolutely correct. When we were on a free flow in terms of the activities, and it was bubbling across, enabling the cities, enabling the departments, and making them more progressive and more efficient, bringing in the transparency. This is the full flow that we were doing before the pandemic. Come one day, we had been asked by the respective states or cities to say that, listen guys, now you will have to go slow. We are going to be under containment. We are going to be under lockdown, and the whole activity has to be divided into remote and on-site. What are those that we could do together in terms of achieving this? While we do so, we don't want these set of people to be removed from the project. We will help support you guys to have them housed in our cities and states, but we want them to completely rework their priorities and start looking at how do we manage COVID from the same smart city in the same length and breadth that we're thinking for other departments. So this whole transformation discussion happened in few days, right, with each of the cities, and we need to regroup ourselves. It is a lot of selfless movement from our people in terms of staying back to deliver on this. We went back, and one of the location was majorly impacted. The building by itself was impacted, so we have to make a makeshift office, get all of these people there, ensure that these people develop the tools, go to the respective hospitals, the labs, train those people on those things so that they can quickly start adapting to it, and ensure that we deliver on how do we control the spread, right? So this is how we changed. Maybe a course of 10 days or 12 days, we had to regroup, rechristen, and get all of those things delivered to manage this pandemic, Dr. Gurcharan.
So what you mean to say is that, the things have moved. So in your experience, has your engagement with the governments, your experience has improved dramatically over the last 3 months in comparison to the past?
Absolutely. How do you need to be agile and more flexible in terms of using the platform and delivering to them at the speed that was required? This was unheard of, right? We typically start doing the planning activities, 3 months of study and come back and all. Here we were talking about days and maximum weeks of delivering services to the citizens. The mobile apps has to be ready. People have to have a platform to communicate with the government. Over and above the telephone calls. WhatsApp was integrated. Social networking was integrated. Sentiment analysis was diagnosed. We went back to the government saying, these are the areas. No food, no shelter for so much percentage of people who are there, and they don't know where to go. Right? A lot of these inputs went back into the government, and the way that the government worked on it and solved one by one, creating people, the systems and processes on how do they reach out, how do they disperse, how do they ensure that it went and reached the last mile, and how do we get that completely tracked. It was a different experience in wholesome when I look at what we used to and what happened in this with this pandemic.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I mean, with the hope that the momentum continues, and this will bring back the speedy recovery to the economy. With that hope, we move on to the next one and say thanks to Ram for giving this interesting presentation. The next poll is already there on your screens. Kindly do participate. A lot of participants have been asking that not been able to vote earlier. So here is an opportunity, and in fact, this voting is for those 16 projects that participated in the exhibition. So kindly do support. Your support matters. You are a stakeholder not only in your own success but also in the success of others. So this is the collaboration, which is what is expected from all of you. So with this, we come to the end of the first session. So I extend my heartfelt thanks to the panelists, Dr. Trivedi, as well as Ram from HPE for joining us for this session. Thank you so much.